Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, welcome back to the podcast and thank you for tuning in to this solo episode in which I want to give you very practical tips on how to track calories when you're eating out. This podcast is a perfect complement to episode 17, Tracking Calories 101. And fun fact about that episode, I was revisiting the notes that I wrote for that episode and realized that at some point in the notes, I wrote something like, meals out. There will be a podcast on this, but also I've already written this article. And it made me realize that I never did record that podcast about how to track calories when it comes to meals out. So here we are, about 113 episodes later, you finally got it. Anyway, let's get straight into the meat and potatoes, pun intended, of this episode. First of all, when you're tracking a meal that you ate at a restaurant, fast food joint, or that somebody else made for you and they didn't calculate the calories and macros on your behalf, the degree of accuracy is going to be lower than if you were to make the food yourself and weigh every single ingredient. And that's absolutely fine. It is far better to have an inaccurate estimate than to have nothing at all. As a coach, if I find a blank on a client's spreadsheet for a day where they were supposed to be tracking their calories, to me, that could mean that they ate 0 calories all the way up to infinity calories. It is essentially useless data. On the other hand, if for that day I see 2,500 calories and they leave me a note saying, "Coach, I ate out for dinner and I did my best to estimate the meal. But, as you know, it won't be as accurate as if I had made it myself." Now, I'm aware that while 2,500 calories may not be exactly how much they ate on that day, it's still a far better estimation than having to assume that they could have gone completely hungry all day or that they could have eaten the entire world. Not only that, but as a coach, I don't only have the caloric intake for that one day. I'm going to have calories and macros for every other day as well, if this person tracks regularly. I'm going to have their body weight, assuming that they are in a place where we're using scale weight as a metric. Or I'm going to have pictures or measurements. I'm going to have their workout routine, including cardio and resistance training. I'm going to have their daily steps, their stress levels, how many hours they slept every night, as well as their sleep quality. I'm going to have a lot of data that I can utilize to gauge whether we are moving in the right direction. And the fact that that one meal they ate out on Friday night wasn't tracked 100% accurately has very little to no bearing on my ability to make that assessment. Another reason why I encourage you to track meals out as well as meals that you make yourself is that some people don't track when they feel ashamed of the food choices that they made. And I think that exposure therapy is the best approach to this issue, because if you keep not tracking foods that you consider in quotation marks bad, like a meal out might be, you're never going to overcome this black or white mentality around food, and you're never going to improve upon your relationship with said food. On the other hand, the more you get used to tracking absolutely everything that you eat, whether more or less accurately, the more you're going to get used to thinking of every single food as simply food. It's neither bad nor good. It's only a decision you made at that point in time. And you'll be happy with some decisions and less happy with others, but they're decisions nonetheless that have no impact on the value that you have as a person, on your moral character, or on anything else that's important to you about yourself. I wanted to start with this message to get you into the right mindset on how to approach a meal out. Hopefully, I've done that now. So let's move on to my options for tracking meals out. First of all, normally I recommend that if you're making the meal yourself, you're going to track it ingredient by ingredient, as I go over in episode 17. But when you are having a homemade meal or a restaurant or fast food meal, you're going to track the whole meal as a single entry on your calorie tracking app. For example, if you're having chicken noodle ramen soup, that's what you're going to track. You're not going to try and eyeball 100 grams of chicken breast, 200 mils of soup, and everything else that's involved in the dish, because it's an unnecessary headache. Not to mention that you're not going to be that much more accurate in this particular case, because most people aren't very adept at estimating and eyeballing serving sizes without weighing them. So the options I'm going to recommend aren't as accurate as if you were going to weigh every single ingredient, but they are accurate enough to give you a ballpark caloric amount, and it takes way less work than if you were to log ingredient by ingredient while also achieving a similar degree of accuracy. With that said, option number one is the easiest and the most commonsensical, if that's even a word. If the website or the menu of the place you're eating at has the calories and macros available, then you're going to report those calories and macros. If it has calories but not macros, then you're going to only report the calories and leave the macros out for that one meal. And if that's the case, I would also suggest that you don't bother with the macros for the entire day, in that don't worry if you're not hitting your typical numbers, because with a meal that's completely missing macros wise, you won't be able to. You can still certainly pay attention to the items on your plate so that you're still having a portion of protein and a side of vegetables and or fruit and a high fiber carbohydrate with each meal. So you know that even if the numbers don't correspond to your typical targets, you're close to hitting them. But with an entirely missing meal, I wouldn't worry about the numbers squaring up with the targets you aim for on a daily basis. If you're eating a homemade meal made by someone else, then you could always ask them to help you estimate the calories and macros, especially if you have a certain familiarity with them and you are comfortable explaining to them that you currently have fitness goals that include the tool of tracking your calories and your macros. Moving on to option two, if the website or the menu does not provide calories or macros, then you can use the calories and or macros for that same dish from a different restaurant. For example, if you're getting a grilled cheese sandwich, you can check out the grilled cheese sandwich from Panera. If the ingredients are roughly the same, if not exactly identical, then you can use Panera's macros and calories. To give you a UK-based example, if you're having a chicken noodle ramen soup from a random Japanese restaurant, and it has similar, if not the same ingredients as the chicken noodle soup from Wagamama, you can use Wagamama's macros and calories. Option number three is very similar to this, to where if you can't find a similar entree from a restaurant that provides calories and macros, then you can use a supermarket meal. For example, a supermarket ready meal. Say that you're eating at an Italian restaurant and you're having a bolognese pasta, and there are no franchises wherever you're based that offer a bolognese pasta with calories and macros available, but you do have a supermarket that sells a ready meal called bolognese pasta, then you can use the calories and macros from that ready meal. Option number four. Let's say that both options 2 and 3 fail, as well as 1, obviously. Then you're going to have to use the database of your calorie tracking app. In some cases, the chronometer or chronometer app can be really useful, because what I like about that app is that the database isn't user generated, but I think it's actually provided by the staff at the company, and it's often double checked to ensure that the entries are correct. And these entries are based in turn on existing national government databases. So it typically is more accurate than the database on an app like MyFitnessPal. However, due to that, they don't often have restaurant or fast food meal macros and calories, in which case your only option is to rely on your own calorie tracking app, in which case most of the databases on the currently available apps are user generated, which means that every user can create their own. And as a result, you're going to have a gazillion different entries with different amounts of calories and different amounts of macros. What I recommend is that you have a look at the list of entries available, and you're going to gain an idea of the ballpark calories for the entry that you're looking for. For example, let's stick with the bolognese pasta. There may be entries as low as 600 calories and entries as high as 1,000 calories. My advice is to stick with the entries on the higher end of the caloric spectrum. This is particularly important if you are in a fat loss phase, but to be honest, I would apply it regardless of your current calorie target, because we know from research that restaurant meals tend to be on average about 20 to 30% more calorific than what is reported on their menu in situations when the menu does provide calories and macros. So even if you were to go somewhere where you do have the calorie content available, it may be roughly 20 to 30% off. So for that reason, if you don't even have that data available to begin with, so your estimation is likely even less accurate, then it makes sense to choose an option that's a little bit higher in calories rather than going for in this particular example, the 600 calorie bolognese. I would choose the 1,000 calorie one. And also, when you're eating out and you do have macros and calories available, I would use those calories and macros and then use the quick add calorie tool on MyFitnessPal or the equivalent on any other app you may use to add about 20% calories on top of those that are stated on the menu. So if the entry that you are going to have has 600 calories reported on the menu, I would add 120 calories on top of that to be on the safe side in the sense of overestimating rather than underestimating. And with that, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you want to make 2025 the year of your mental and physical gains, I am taking on online clients, so you can apply via the link in the show notes. Or if you simply want to reach out to me, please do so via my Instagram account or via my email address. And as always, if you can leave a review or a rating on this podcast, that would be amazing to help me reach more people. And I cannot state how grateful I would be, because I've been recording episodes since July 2022. I haven't missed a single week, and I've sometimes posted twice per week. So clearly you can tell that I'm very committed to making this podcast as good as it can be and to be consistent with it. And a very budget-friendly way to support me is to simply tell me that you like the podcast with a review or a rating. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.